Okay, so today we're going to go through the next distortion pedal in Helix, continuing my little series of going through these pedals and looking at the EQ curves and the distortion characteristics of the pedals. So the next pedal on the list is the Teemah, or the Teemah. So let's take a quick look. If we look over here at my spectrum analyzer screen, you see my test tone, minus 10 dB. As usual, if you watched my videos before, you've seen this. And if we go ahead and we hit quick sweep, we'll take a look, and this is what the factory settings of the Teemah look like. As we can see, it's fairly kind of flat-ish, 3-4 dB boost, you know, from zero. It's a 10 dB boost because their test tone was at 10, but it's kind of flat out to, you know, what, 1K, and then it rolls off here. It's breaking up a lot. You can see a lot of wiggly lines, so we're definitely compressing and starting to distort and what have you. That's the factory setting. First thing I want to show you before I go any further is, let me turn this off. And this pedal has 3 settings for different sets of clipping diodes that are in the feedback loop on the op amp. It's a typical overdrive thing. They'll put a feedback loop on the op amp. It takes a little bit of the boosted signal and feeds it back into the amplifier. And it's part of the way overdrives make their distortion. And they'll often put clipping diodes in those feedback loops. And this has a set of diodes in the feedback loop that's always on, and then it has 2 other diodes that you can flip in and out with switches. So there's basically 2 diodes, so there's 3 combinations. There's both off, both on, or 1 on and 1 off. And so that's what these 3 clipping settings are. It's what up, middle, and down, right? It's what they're listed as: down, middle, and up. So it's basically, it's probably on a DP-DT switch on the face of the pedal, and those are the 3 modes. So I'm going to show this. This is the pedal with the 3 different modes, showing the EQ curve. Is not a lot of difference. There's some difference in the trebles. We're really going to look at this. It makes more of a difference in the distortion characteristics, so I'm not going to go through every single iteration of possible tone up, tone down. I basically want to run through the EQ on this and just show you all the EQ curves. And like I said, we'll look at the clipping diodes when we get into the distortion characteristics of the pedal. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. So let me turn these 3 back off real quick, and let me take the gain and set the gain on 0, and let's do a quick sweep. Oh, let me turn these other 2 off. There we go. Okay, so now we see the pedal with the gain on 0 and the level at factory, which is 6.2. We see this EQ curve. This EQ curve looks very familiar to me. It looks a heck of a lot like the EQ curve that is this one here, which is the Teemah, kinky comp. Let me resweep that because when I moved it, I kind of shut this thing off. So hang on. And here we go. So this is the turn you on. Sweep. There we go. Okay. So as you can see now, we have this yellow line is actually a kinky comp, and I took a look at this before because it looked so familiar. And this is the Teemah. Now, if I take the Teemah, this is with the Teemah with the gain on 0. Now, if I take the Teemah and I dime the Teemah and I redo a sweep, we're extremely close. Yeah, it's almost exactly the same as a kinky comp. That's the kinky comp at factory settings. The kinky comp obviously can boost higher than this, but this is with the kinky comp with the boost on 5. So it's just an interesting thing that it's a really, really close pedal to that. I thought I'd point it out. Next thing let's look at is, let's put the gain on about 2.5. We'll take this back down to 6.2, which was our factory setting on the output level. All right, and let's do a sweep of this with the gain now on 1.8. And this thing looks a lot like a Minotaur now. It looks a heck of a lot like a Klon. Now again, we're not talking about the breakup characteristics. I'm not talking about the waveform shape and the way it distorts, but I'm talking about the EQ characteristic of the pedal. And so this becomes a mid-hump pedal. This is like a mid-humpy kind of thing. When you have the gain on like around 2.5, it does this through here. Let's bring the gain up to 5, and we saw that before. That was our factory. Hello, dog. My dog just showed up. That's our factory setting. And if I bring the gain up farther, we'll go to 3/4 of the way up. And now it's just breaking up more. The pedal's running out of headroom in here, and it's really not going to get much louder. It's just going to get more distorted. Okay, a little bit louder maybe, but it's really just, you can see the lines are getting really, really jagged. It's just starting to break up a lot. So let's take the gain back down. I'm going to take down to like 2.1 here, and because I know the pedal will run pretty clean here. Turn that kinky boost off. You don't need to look at that. All right, and now let's do a bass cut. Now these are cut controls, so as you slide them up, they cut more. They're kind of the reverse of a normal tone control, or at least the way normal control is labeled. So as I slide the bass up, and put the bass up cut up on 10, so it's going to cut the most bass, and let's take a look and see what that looks like. All right, so that was with the bass cut. We're going to save that in 1. And now let's turn the bass cut off so it cuts the least amount of bass. We'll save that in 2. And now we'll put the bass cut back in the middle, which is 5. And now let's put the treble cut all the way up, so this is going to cut the most amount of treble. And we'll save that in 3. And then let's put the treble cut all the way down, which is going to cut the least amount of treble. Let's save that in 4. And now we'll go back to that in 5 in the center, 5.0, and do a sweep of that. Okay, so now you see your EQ curves of the Klon here. The bass dimed, it breaks up because it's pushing more bass into the pedal, and it's breaking it up. It's running out of headroom. Let me just do that. Let's do that. That's the best way to look at this. Okay, so this is the blue line is with the treble and bass both on 5. This is with the treble cut all the way. So the treble cut is dimed, and this is with the treble cut on 0. And this is the difference in the EQ curves. And okay, this is the bass cut all the way and the bass not cut at all. And those are the differences in those two curves. Okay, so now I want to take a look at the different clipping characteristics and the distortion characteristics of the Teemah drive. And we'll start with everything on 5. The gain, the bass cut, and the treble cut are going to be on 5. The level's just set to the factory level. And let's start by taking a quick look at what these clipping diodes do. So this is with the clipping diodes in the up position. And as we can see here, it's not a perfect sine wave. We have pointy on one end and rounder on the other. Now as we slide the gain control, bring the gain down, it turns back into a perfect sine wave, or very close to it. And as the gain comes up, those clipping diodes influence the sound more, and it gets pointier. To a certain point, it gets pointier, and then after a while, after you get above 5, it stops to matter as much, and both ends of the sine wave become more and more similar until when the gain is dimed, the clipping diodes aren't making a huge difference at that point as far as making an asymmetric wave. The wave becomes more symmetrical. So let's take a look. Let's put the gain back in the center, and let's take a look at the second clipping diode setting, which is in the middle, which is the center position. And let's slide the gain again. Let's take the gain all the way down. Again, we get a nice sine wave. As we come up, it's symmetrical, and we get that same kind of sawtooth wave to the left that we had before. Again, back to 5. It's pretty even, and it's almost like a sine wave. As we slide it back down, slide the gain back down, we get back to almost a perfect sine wave. Now if we take the clipping diodes and put them in the down position, same thing here was centered. Cut the gain down, we become very little distortion, very nice smooth sine wave, bring it up, and we get really squashed down versions of that that sawtooth wave kind of hooked to the left. Now, I just want to do this real quick. This is with the gain dimed, and I want to go through the 3 different settings. So, clipping diodes up, which is the left position. You can see the height from peak to peak is basically the volume, and we have some volume changes that also happened as we go through this. So this is with the switch up. This is with the switch in the middle, and as you can see, the pedal gets louder. And then this is with the switch in the down position. As you can see, the pedal gets much quieter. That's really kind of like a headroom thing. The amount of headroom you're getting in the pedal, it's compressing more. And that's the way those diodes kind of influence the wave shape. All right, so now let's take a look at our next setting, which is going to be at 500 hertz. Okay, so here we have the pedal at 500 hertz with the gain in the middle and the clipping diodes in the up position. And as you can see now, we're kind of getting a pointier wave that's curving to the right a little bit. It's kind of deformed to the right. As we take the gain and we slide the gain down, we get close to a perfect sine wave. And as we bring the gain up, the hook becomes more pronounced. So we're dimed. It kind of actually gets a little bit rounder, the waveform. Here it's a little pointier. Here it becomes a little rounder as it kind of compresses more and more. And as you compress, it kind of gets squashed. It can't really get any louder, so it kind of rounds out the ends of the waves. Let's put the clipping diodes in the center now and do the same test. Okay, so this is on 5. Again, we see the same thing we saw before. It gets a little louder in the center position. Now, as we bring the gain down, again, we go back to a nice sine wave. And as we bring the gain up, we get hooked, and then it starts to compress and gets a little bit rounder on the end. Same behavior. It's interesting that in this frequency band, instead of being curved to the left like the last ones were, it's curved to the right. So at 100 hertz, it was a different type of wave behavior, a different type of distortion characteristic than it is at 500 hertz. So now let's put the clipping diodes in the center and do the same test. We're on 5 here. We bring it down. We get a nice sine wave. As we bring the gain up, it hooks to the right, gets pointy, and then it starts to round out as it becomes more compressed. So we're seeing the same type of behavior as we did in all 3 positions. Again, with the 3 positions, though, we end up with different amounts of headroom, different volume, which ends up with a different volume output because the pedal can come. When it's not being compressed, it can get a little louder. Those are the differences we're seeing. So now let's take a look at the next frequency, which is going to be 1000 hertz. Okay, so here we see the pedal operating at 1000 hertz. We're sending a 1000 hertz sine wave into it. And as we can see, similar to at 500, it's curved to the right and it's a little bit pointy. The clipping diodes are in the up position at the moment. As I bring the gain down, we can see it gets closer to a sine wave. When it's all the way off, it's a sine wave. As we bring it up, we can see, now you can still see the asymmetrical clipping. It's definitely pointier here, and it's definitely kind of more curved down here and a little bit hooked. So the asymmetrical clipping diodes are definitely still having an effect on it. It's just less pronounced as we go up the frequency range, or it doesn't appear as much on the oscilloscope. You'll definitely hear it though. Let's continue, bring the gain up, and it starts to compress, and both ends get a little rounded. As we come back down to 5, and let's go to the next diode position, which is the center position, which was the most symmetrical. And let's take the gain all the way down. Nice sine wave. As we bring the gain up, it starts to get a little more pointy. A little more pointy. And then it starts to hook. And it's starting to do this about evenly. And again, it starts to compress in this top zone. It goes from pointy to kind of rounded on the ends. So it's compressing it as it runs out of headroom. And now let's go to the last position, which is the center position. Oh, sorry, which is the down position. And let's run the same test. Let's bring the gain down to 0. Again, a nice sine wave. Comes up, it's getting pointy, starting to curve. Still curving. Now we're at 5. Now the pedal's going to start to compress. It's not really getting much louder, but it's definitely getting rounder on the ends until we dime it. So from 5 on up, it's compressing. And that's what waves look like when they compress. They just run out of room to get louder, so then they have to kind of all get squeezed in there. Okay, so now let's look at the last frequency band that we're going to look at, which is 2000 hertz. Okay, so here we have the pedal at 2000 hertz with a 2000 hertz sine wave going into it. The gain's in the middle, bass and treble 1 in the middle, and the clipping diodes are in the up position. And we can see the curve of the sine wave. It's definitely going to hook to the right. And as I bring the gain down, it starts to become closer to a symmetrical sine wave. As I bring the gain back up, we get to 5. It starts to get pointy and hook to the right. And as I get higher and higher and higher, it starts to compress and round off the ends. It can't really get any louder, so it just compresses up. All right, let's take a look in the center position now. Okay, so this is with the gain on 5. Again, you can see it's pointy and kind of hooked to the right, similar as we saw at 1000 hertz and at 500 hertz. So we bring it down, it becomes a smooth sine wave. Again, I bring it up, and it starts to get pointier and starts to curve to the right. As I move up past 5 with the gain control, it starts to compress and get a little rounder on the ends. So it's a very similar behavior pretty much all the way through the upper frequencies of this pedal. So let's take the gain back down. All right, this is the last position. Clipping diodes are in the down position. And here we are with the gain on 5. As I bring the gain down to 0, once again we get a nice sine wave. As it gets louder, it starts to get pointy and starts to distort, curve to the right. And from 5 on up to 10, as I bring the gain on up more, it starts to compress. And that is pretty much it for the distortion characteristics of the Teemah. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, please press like and subscribe. And I'll be posting this on my blog. And that's it. Have a great day.